It's easy to feel detached from regional conflicts. We see them on the news happening in places we may never visit, but this is a dangerous illusion. In our interconnected world, no conflict truly stays isolated. What starts as a local flare-up can escalate into a global inferno. History is replete with examples of the domino effect. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo in 1914 ignited the First World War. Decades later, the Cuban Missile Crisis brought the world to the brink of nuclear annihilation. These historical events serve as stark reminders of the interconnectedness of global affairs. Today we face new challenges: the war in Ukraine, tensions in the South China Sea, and ongoing conflicts in the Middle East. These conflicts, though geographically distant, have the potential to trigger a cascade of consequences that could reshape the global order. The year is 1914. Europe is a powder keg of nationalism and imperial ambition. On a sunny June morning, Archduke Franz Ferdinand arrives in Sarajevo, Bosnia. Unbeknownst to the Archduke, a young Serbian nationalist named Gavrilo Princip lurks in the crowd. As the Archduke's motorcade navigates the crowded streets, Princip seizes his opportunity. A shot rings out. The Archduke and his wife are fatally wounded. This seemingly isolated act of violence will plunge the world into war. The assassination exposed the fragility of peace in a world teetering on the edge of conflict. The intricate web of alliances that had been woven across Europe begins to unravel. Within weeks of the assassination in Sarajevo, Europe is engulfed in war. Austria-Hungary, with Germany's backing, declares war on Serbia. Russia, bound by treaty to protect Serbia, mobilizes its troops. Germany, fearing a two-front war, declares war on Russia and its ally France. Britain, obligated to defend Belgium's neutrality, declares war on Germany. The dominoes have begun to fall, each declaration of war triggering another. What began as a regional conflict in the Balkans quickly escalated into a global conflagration. The rapid escalation of the July crisis highlights the dangers of entangled alliances. Decades after the First World War, the world once again found itself on the brink of disaster. This time, the flashpoint was Cuba. In 1962, the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union reached a fever pitch during the Cuban Missile Crisis. The discovery of Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba sparked a tense 13-day standoff. The Cuban Missile Crisis was a classic example of the domino effect playing out on a global scale. A regional conflict had escalated into a confrontation between the world's two superpowers. The world held its breath as President John F. Kennedy and Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev engaged in a high-stakes game of brinksmanship. The potential consequences of miscalculation were terrifying. The fate of the world hung in the balance, a stark reminder of how regional conflicts could escalate into existential threats. As we navigate the complexities of the 21st century, the lessons of Sarajevo and the Cuban Missile Crisis remain as relevant as ever. The domino effect is not a relic of the past, but an ever-present reality in our interconnected world. Today, we face new flashpoints, from the ongoing war in Ukraine to simmering tensions in the South China Sea. Understanding the domino effect is about recognizing the interconnectedness of global affairs. It is about appreciating that the decisions made in distant capitals can have a profound impact on our collective security and well-being. The ongoing war in Ukraine stands as a stark reminder of the domino effect's enduring power. What began as a regional conflict has rapidly escalated into a crisis with global implications. Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 sent shockwaves across the international community. The human cost of the conflict is immeasurable. Millions of Ukrainians have been displaced from their homes. The war has disrupted supply chains, fueled inflation, and raised fears of food shortages. The Western world has responded with unprecedented sanctions against Russia. However, these measures have had mixed results, and the conflict continues to rage on. In today's interconnected world, regional conflicts rarely remain confined to geographical boundaries. The global economy acts as a conduit for the transmission of shocks and disruptions. When conflict erupts in one part of the world, the tremors can be felt across continents. The war in Ukraine has provided a stark illustration of this phenomenon. Russia's status as a major energy exporter has given it significant leverage in the conflict. The disruption of Russian energy exports has sent shockwaves through European energy markets. Beyond energy, the conflict has also disrupted global food supplies. This has had a disproportionate impact on developing countries in Africa and the Middle East. While the world's attention remains fixed on the crisis in Ukraine, another potential flashpoint simmers in the Asia-Pacific region, the South China Sea. This strategically vital waterway has become a focal point for geopolitical tensions. China's assertive actions in the region have raised concerns among its neighbors and the United States. The risk of miscalculation and escalation remains high. The South China Sea dispute highlights the complex interplay of economic, strategic, and nationalist interests that often fuel regional conflicts. Regional conflicts are rarely isolated events. They are often symptoms of deeper geopolitical fault lines and competing national interests. Understanding the complexities of these conflicts is crucial for mitigating the risks of wider conflict. Diplomacy remains an indispensable tool for resolving conflicts and fostering dialogue. Strengthening international institutions can provide a framework for mediating disputes and promoting cooperation on global challenges. In the heat of conflict, miscalculation is an ever-present danger. The fog of war can lead to tragic mistakes with far-reaching consequences. Misunderstandings and the pressures of making split-second decisions can all contribute to unintended escalation. Imagine a scenario where a reconnaissance aircraft strays across a disputed border. The incursion is detected by the opposing side, which scrambles fighter jets to intercept the aircraft. Tensions escalate rapidly as both sides attempt to interpret the other's actions. The potential for a minor incident to spiral into a full-blown conflict becomes terrifyingly real. History is replete with examples of how miscalculations have led to unintended escalation. In the 21st century, the nature of warfare has evolved into cyberspace. Cyber warfare has emerged as a potent tool for espionage, sabotage, and military confrontation. The interconnected nature of our world has created vulnerabilities that can be exploited by malicious actors. Cyber attacks can cripple transportation systems, shut down power grids, and disrupt financial markets. In the context of regional conflict, cyber warfare can be used to gain a strategic advantage. Imagine a scenario where one side launches a sophisticated cyber attack on the other's banking system. The attack could trigger social unrest and calls for retaliation, potentially escalating the conflict. Looming over any discussion of escalation in regional conflicts is the specter of nuclear weapons. These instruments of unimaginable destruction cast a long shadow over international relations. The doctrine of mutually assured destruction has served as a fragile foundation for nuclear deterrence. However, the risk of miscalculation or the actions of a rogue state acquiring nuclear weapons remains a constant source of anxiety. The use of even a single nuclear weapon would have catastrophic consequences for the entire world. In the face of these escalating risks, the need for effective strategies to de-escalate conflicts has never been greater. Diplomacy, communication, and a commitment to peaceful resolution must be at the forefront. Building and maintaining open channels of communication between potential adversaries is crucial. Strengthening international institutions can also play a vital role in de-escalating conflicts. These organizations can provide a forum for dialogue, mediation, and conflict resolution. In a world often teetering on the brink of chaos, diplomacy stands as the first and most crucial line of defense against the domino effect of escalating regional conflicts. Diplomacy, in its essence, is the art of communication between nations. It's about building bridges of understanding, however fragile, across the divides of history, ideology, and national interest. Effective diplomacy requires patience, empathy, and a willingness to see the world through the eyes of others. It demands that we move beyond simplistic narratives of us versus them and recognize the shared humanity that connects us all. It requires us to acknowledge that even in the midst of conflict, there are always shared interests and common ground to be found. History is replete with examples of how diplomacy, even at the 11th hour, has averted disaster and paved the way for a more peaceful future. The Cuban Missile Crisis, though a terrifying close call, ultimately demonstrated the power of direct communication between adversaries. The ability of President Kennedy and Premier Khrushchev to find a way out of that crisis, despite the immense pressure they were under, offers a beacon of hope in our own troubled times. While diplomacy forms the cornerstone of conflict prevention, it requires a robust framework to be truly effective. This is where international institutions, often imperfect and perpetually evolving, play a critical role. Organizations like the United Nations, though frequently criticized for their limitations, provide a vital forum for dialogue, mediation, and the peaceful resolution of disputes. Strengthening these institutions, ensuring they have the resources, legitimacy, and political will to act decisively, is paramount in our interconnected world. This means investing in conflict prevention mechanisms, bolstering peacekeeping operations, and upholding international law. It also means reforming and modernizing these institutions to reflect the realities of the 21st century. Beyond the United Nations, regional organizations, non-governmental organizations, and civil society groups all play a vital role in building a more peaceful and just world. By fostering dialogue, promoting cooperation, and advocating for peaceful solutions, these actors help to create a global tapestry of peace building, one thread at a time. In the digital age, information travels at the speed of light. This interconnectedness, while amplifying the risks of the domino effect, also presents an unprecedented opportunity to empower global citizens to become agents of peace. Awareness is the first step towards action, and every individual has the power to make a difference. By staying informed about global events, educating ourselves about the root causes of conflict, and supporting organizations working to build a more peaceful world, we can all contribute to a more stable and just future. We can engage in constructive dialogue, challenge misinformation, and hold our leaders accountable for their actions on the world stage. Never underestimate the power of raising your voice. Contact your elected officials, participate in peaceful protests, and use social media to amplify messages of peace and understanding. Each act of courage, no matter how small, can create a ripple effect of its own, inspiring others to join the movement for a more peaceful and just world. The domino effect of regional conflicts is not an inevitability, it is a call to action. The interconnectedness of our world, while amplifying the risks of escalation, also empowers us to become architects of a more peaceful and just global order. We are all stakeholders in this endeavor, and each of us has a role to play in shaping a future where conflict is not a foregone conclusion, but a shared challenge to be overcome through dialogue, understanding, and a commitment to our common humanity. The path forward requires a multifaceted approach, one that recognizes the complexity of the challenges we face and embraces the interconnected nature of our world. Diplomacy must be our guiding principle, underpinned by a willingness to listen, to empathize, and to seek common ground even amidst seemingly intractable differences. Strengthening international institutions provides a framework for cooperation, mediation, and the peaceful resolution of disputes. Most importantly, we must cultivate a culture of peace, one that values dialogue over violence, understanding over prejudice, and cooperation over competition. This begins with education, with fostering empathy and critical thinking skills in our youth. It requires engaging in open and honest conversations about the root causes of conflict, challenging injustice and inequality wherever they exist. The domino effect is a stark reminder of the fragility of peace, but it also underscores the power of human agency. Let us choose hope over fear, action over apathy, and together chart a course towards a more peaceful and just world for ourselves and for generations to come.